The Void-class destroyer Nightfall hung in space like a predator's shadow, its obsidian hull drinking in starlight and reflecting nothing back. Captain Vexithera of the Quithan hegemony had been hunting this particular human vessel for 3 standard cycles, and now, finally, the prey was within reach. "Target acquired, Dominarch," reported Scanner Prime Krell Nost, his chitinous fingers dancing across holographic displays. "The black ship maintains position at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. No escort vessels detected." Vexithera's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The humans' mysterious black ships had been appearing throughout Quithan territory for months. Always. Alone, always silent, always disappearing before proper intercept could be achieved. This one would be different. This one would provide the technological secrets that would cement the hegemony's dominance over the 17 lesser species under their rule. "Broadcast surrender demands," Vexithera commanded, her voice resonating through the bridge's bioacoustic chambers. "Standard Protocol 7. If they refuse, prepare boarding action." The communications array hummed to life, projecting the hegemony's might across the void. "Human vessel, you have violated sovereign Quithan space. Submit to immediate boarding and inspection, or face the consequences of Imperial displeasure." For long moments, silence stretched between the ships. Then, unexpectedly, a response crackled through their translators, not in the formal diplomatic channels, but on an open frequency that every ship in the system could hear. "This is Commander Rex Vandermeer of the Terran Exploration Corps vessel. Shadow Point. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from this system. This is your only warning." Vexithera's hunting spines flared with amusement. "One ship against our battle group? These humans grow more arrogant by the cycle." She gestured to her tactical coordinator. "Grixhan, show them the futility of their defiance." The Quithan fleet emerged from sensor shadows. 12 heavy cruisers, 40 destroyer-class vessels, and the massive command Dreadnought Dominion's Fist. Over 300 ships in total, representing 1/8 of the hegemony's entire naval strength. They had come prepared for anything the mysterious human technology might throw at them. "Impressive," came Vandermeer's voice again, maddeningly calm. "Tell me, Dominarch, how much did it cost your empire to assemble this fleet? How many worlds? Did you strip of their defenses to bring this much firepower to bear against a single ship?" "Your psychological warfare is primitive," Vexithera replied. "Surrender now, and your crew will be permitted to serve the hegemony in labor camps. Refuse, and we will take your vessel's wreckage and corpses." "I see." There was something in the human's tone that made Vexithera's sensory spines twitch uneasily. "You know, Commander, there's something beautiful about a species that can coordinate. 300 ships across multiple star systems, all to capture one vessel. It shows real dedication to the principle of overwhelming force. Your point, human? My point is that you've just made the biggest tactical error in your species' history. You see, we've been watching your empire for some time, learning, cataloging, and you've just shown us exactly where your fleet concentration points are, what your response patterns look like, and how you think." The transmission cut to silence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shadow point simply, "Wasn't there any more? Scanner report?" Vexithera barked. "Gone, Dominarch. No energy signatures, no debris field. It's as if the vessel never existed." Before Vexithera could respond, new contacts began appearing on their screens. Not ships, something else entirely. Geometric structures, each the size of a moon, materializing throughout Quithan space, with the casual ease of thoughts becoming reality. And from each structure came a voice, Vandermeer's voice, multiplied across 1,000 frequencies. "Thank you for the demonstration, Dominarch. Now let us show you what humans do to empires that mistake exploration vessels for prey." Fleet Marshal Torthvek of the Hegemony High Command received the first distress signals while reviewing planetary taxation reports in his orbital fortress above Quithan Prime. The messages came in clusters, Panicked, fragmented, impossible. "Sir, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from the Outer Reach fleets," reported his aide, scanner adept Will Neth. "Multiple vessels reporting unknown megastructures appearing in their patrol zones." Elaborate. Torthvek's feeding tentacles curled with irritation. The Outer Reach was their most secure border. Nothing had challenged Quithan authority there in 40 standard cycles. "The structures appear to be modular constructs, sir. Immense. Our scouts report they're larger than our capital shipyards, but they appeared instantaneously. No hyperspace distortion, no energy buildup. They're just there." Torthvek activated his command sphere, holographic displays surrounding him with tactical data from across the hegemony. What he saw made his bioluminescent patches dim with shock. 17 different star systems showed the same phenomenon. Massive, geometric structures appearing at strategic hyperspace junction points. "Status report from Dominarch Vex Thara's hunting fleet?" "No response for the past standard hour, sir. Last transmission indicated they had cornered a human vessel in the Kepler 442 system." The connection clicked in Torthvek's mind like a genetic memory surfacing. "Open priority channels to all fleet commands. I want every available ship recalled to defensive positions around our primary worlds. Now." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The tactical displays showed Quithan vessels throughout their territory suddenly going dark, not destroyed but simply ceasing to exist. One moment they were there, the next their transponder signals flatlined into void black silence. "Sir," Wilneth's voice carried an edge of species-deep terror. "We're receiving a system-wide broadcast. Origin point unknown." The main display shimmered, and Commander Vandermeer's face appeared. Not the grainy image from a ship's communication array, but crystal-clear holography that somehow conveyed depth and presence despite being transmitted across impossible distances. "Greetings, citizens of the Quithan hegemony. My name is Rex Vandermeer, and I represent the interests of the Terran Exploration Corps. Your military leadership has made a series of unfortunate decisions regarding human vessels in what you consider your territory." Torthvek's command staff exchanged glances. The human's Quithan was perfect, not translated, but spoken with native fluency, complete with proper honorific structures and cultural context. "By now, your fleet commanders have noticed certain changes in your strategic situation. Let me provide some context. The vessels you've been encountering, what you call the Black Ships, are not warships. They are not scouts. They are not even proper military assets by our standards." Vandermeer's expression remained conversational, almost friendly. "They are graduate student research projects. Doctoral candidates in our Naval Academy use them for xenosociological field studies. The ship your Dominarch attempted to capture was operated by a 23-year-old human named Kestrel Nix Hartwell, who was writing her dissertation on imperial expansion patterns among oxygen-breathing species." The silence on the command deck was absolute. Miss Nix Hartwell is unharmed, by the way. Her vessel's defensive systems activated automatically when your fleet achieved target lock. She was quite surprised to discover that anyone had attempted to attack what is, essentially, a flying library with engines. Torthvek found his voice. "What do you want, human?" "Want?" Vandermeer seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "Fleet Marshal, you seem to be operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. This isn't a negotiation. This is notification. Your empire attempted to capture a human citizen engaged in peaceful academic research. The penalty for such action has already been determined and is currently being implemented. You cannot destroy an entire interstellar civilization over one incident." "Destroy?" Vandermeer's laugh was genuinely amused. "Fleet Marshal, we're not going to destroy anything. That would be wasteful. Instead, we're going to do something much more educational." The display shifted, showing a real-time view of Quithan Prime from orbit. But something was wrong with the image. the planet seemed smaller somehow, as if viewed from a much greater distance. "Your homeworld has been relocated," Vandermeer explained conversationally. "It now orbits a red dwarf star approximately 47,000 light-years from its original position. Don't worry, we've maintained your planetary ecosystem perfectly. The new star provides adequate warmth and light." Torthvek's command staff began chattering in panic, but he could only stare at the display as the truth sank in. "All 17 of your core worlds have been similarly relocated," Vandermeer continued. "Your colonies, mining operations, and industrial facilities remain where they were. Your fleets, however—" He paused meaningfully. "Well, fleet coordination becomes rather difficult when your ships are scattered across the galaxy and your command structure is 47,000 light-years away from your operational assets." The implications hit Torthvek like a collapsing star. Without their core worlds, without centralized command, the hegemony's far-flung empire would collapse within months. Species that had been held in subjugation for centuries would break free. Trade routes would dissolve. The vast bureaucratic structure that held 17 worlds in thrall would simply stop. "This concludes our educational demonstration," Vandermeer said pleasantly. "Future graduate students will have clear examples of what happens when academic research is mistaken for military aggression. Good day, Fleet Marshal." The transmission ended, leaving Torthvek alone with the weight of understanding that his species had just learned a lesson they would never forget. Dr. Zelith Kraymauer had spent 43 standard years studying the ruins of fallen civilizations. The Quithen hegemony's Archaeological Survey Division had sent her to catalog the remnants of extinct species across 12 sectors, mapping the rise and fall of galactic powers. She had never expected to become part of such a study herself. The Emergency Council convened in the deepest chambers of Quithen Prime's relocated capital, a hastily constructed facility that bore little resemblance to the grand imperial architecture they'd been forced to abandon. Representatives from the 17 core worlds crowded around a holographic display showing the current state of their former empire. "Status report," requested Elder Prime Nexthyra, her bioluminescent patches flickering with stress patterns. "Total governmental collapse in the outer territories," reported Colonial Administrator Brexkoth. 43 worlds have declared independence. 79 others have simply stopped responding to administrative inquiries. The Helixian species has reclaimed their homeworld and expelled all Quithen administrative personnel. Zeleth watched the tactical display with professional fascination. In 43 years of studying dead civilizations, she had always wondered about the exact moment when a galactic empire realized it was finished. Now she was living through that moment. "What about our fleet assets?" asked Naval Coordinator Wex Plinth. "Scattered across the galaxy. Most of our ship commanders don't even know where they are relative to our new positions. The few that have managed to establish contact report their navigation systems are completely useless. Stellar cartography is meaningless when your reference points have been moved 47,000 light-years. Elder Prime Nexthyra's feeding tentacles writhed with barely controlled panic. "How is this possible? How does a species develop the technology to relocate entire star systems?" Zelith cleared her throat respectfully. "If I may, Elder Prime, I believe I can provide some context." The council turned to her with expressions of desperate hope. An archaeologist's perspective suddenly seemed valuable when trying to understand how they had become archaeology themselves. "In my studies of extinct civilizations, I've identified 3 categories of species-ending events: natural disasters, stellar collapse, asteroid impacts, internal collapse, civil wars, resource depletion, social breakdown, and—" She paused, accessing her research files. "External intervention by superior civilizations." "Explain," Nexthyra commanded. "The Velthari, Dominion, for example. 3,000 years ago, they controlled 47 star systems. advanced technology, powerful military, sophisticated government structure. According to their final transmissions, they encountered what they described as impossible beings, who moved stars like children move toys. Zelith activated her archaeological database, showing holographic reconstructions of various dead civilizations. The Corvanian Empire, the Nexus Federation, the Ithak Sovereignty, all spacefaring civilizations, all technologically advanced, all ended the same way, contact with entities capable of stellar engineering on a scale that defied their understanding. Are you suggesting, Wexaplinth asked slowly, that we've encountered gods? Not gods, Zelith replied. Just a species so far beyond our development that their casual capabilities seem godlike to us. Think of it this way. If a primitive species encountered us, wouldn't our ability to travel between stars seem impossible? Wouldn't our terraforming technology appear magical? The council absorbed this in uncomfortable silence. The pattern is always the same, Zelith continued. The advanced civilization contacts the lesser one. The lesser species attempts to respond with conventional military force. The advanced species demonstrates why this was inadvisable. And then, she gestured to the empty displays showing their former empire. Educational adjustment. Educational? Elder Prime Nexthyra's voice carried dangerous undertones. Look at our situation objectively, Zelith said, warming to her analysis. We haven't been exterminated. Our populations are intact. Our core worlds are habitable and protected, but our imperial structure has been completely dismantled without a single shot being fired. She activated a new display showing historical patterns. Every species I've studied that survived contact with superior civilizations had one thing in common. They learned to abandon imperial expansion and focus on internal development. The humans haven't destroyed us. They've forced us to become something else. What are you suggesting we do? Brexkoth asked. Adapt, Zelith said simply. Our empire is gone. Our military dominance is finished. But our species survives. Instead of 17 subject worlds held by force, we now have 17 equal worlds that must choose to cooperate. Instead of a military hierarchy, we need a cooperative federation. And if we refuse? Nexthera asked. Zelith pulled up her final archaeological file, images of barren worlds orbiting dead stars. These are the species that refuse to learn. The humans appear to be remarkably patient teachers, but their curriculum is non-negotiable. As if summoned by her words, the chamber's communication array activated. Commander Vandermeer's image appeared, as clear and present as if he were standing among them. Good evening, council members. I hope you're finding your new accommodations adequate. Dr. Kraymauer, your analysis is quite perceptive. You have a promising career ahead of you in xenoarchaeological studies, assuming your species chooses the educational path rather than the archaeological one. Zelith felt her bioluminescent patches flush with professional pride despite the circumstances. You've been given time to adjust to your new situation, Vandermeer continued. When you're ready to discuss the next phase of your species' development, simply broadcast a request for educational consultation. We'll be happy to provide guidance. The transmission ended, leaving the council to contemplate their choice between evolution and extinction. Zelith began composing her request for consultation. After 43 years of studying dead civilizations, she had no intention of becoming one herself. The response to Dr. Kraymauer's consultation request came not as a transmission, but as a presence. Commander Vandermeer appeared in the council chamber, not as a hologram, but physically present, as if he had simply walked through walls that offered no resistance to his passage. Dr. Kraymauer, he said warmly, extending a hand in the human gesture of greeting. Your archaeological work on the Ithak sovereignty was particularly insightful. We used your research to understand their cultural patterns before making contact. Zelith accepted the handshake with trembling appendages. The human's presence felt simultaneously reassuring and incomprehensible, like conversing with a natural force that had chosen to wear a friendly face. "You've been studying us?" Elder Prime Nexathyra asked, her bioluminescent patches cycling through confusion patterns. "Of course," Vandermeer replied, settling into a chair that definitely hadn't been there moments before. The Terran exploration. Corps has been observing the Quithan hegemony for approximately 40 standard years. Your expansion patterns, cultural development, technological progression, all quite fascinating from an anthropological perspective. And you waited until now to make contact? Naval Coordinator Wex Plinth's voice carried an edge of accusation. "We made contact when your species demonstrated it was ready for education," Vandermeer explained patiently. "Previously, you showed no signs of questioning your imperial paradigm. The attempt to capture Miss Nix Hartwell's research vessel indicated you had reached the point where direct intervention became necessary." Zilith leaned forward, her scholarly instincts overriding protocol. "How many species have you educated?" Currently, approximately 4,700 civilizations maintain active educational relationships with the Terran core. Most have graduated to full partnership status within 50 to 100 standard years. The numbers were staggering. Elder Prime Nexthyra's feeding tentacles curled in disbelief. 4,000 civilizations? How vast is human space? Vandermeer smiled. Human space, in the traditional sense, consists of one star system, Sol, where our species evolved. Everything else is collaborative territory. We don't own worlds, Dr. Nexthyra. We participate in galactic civilization. "But your technology," Brexkoth protested. "Moving entire star systems, instantaneous travel, how is such power possible?" "The same way your technology seems impossible to a species that hasn't developed hyperspace travel," Vandermeer replied. "When you understand the fundamental structure of space-time as a malleable substrate rather than a fixed backdrop, stellar engineering becomes a matter of applied physics rather than miraculous intervention." Xylith's research instincts kicked into overdrive. "How long have humans possessed this technology?" "We developed basic stellar manipulation approximately 800 years ago. Instantaneous positioning, what you call moving star systems, came about 600 years later. The current educational protocols were established roughly 2 centuries ago, after we encountered a particularly stubborn empire that required multiple interventions." "What happened to them?" Wexaplinth asked. "They became the founding members of the Galactic Educational Consortium. They now help us develop curriculum for newly contacted species." Vandermeer's expression grew more serious. "Understanding superior technology isn't the real challenge, Council members. Understanding superior philosophy is what determines whether a species thrives or becomes a cautionary tale." "Explain," Elder Prime Nexthyra commanded. "Your empire was built on the principle that stronger species should dominate weaker ones. This is a natural evolutionary step. Most civilizations go through an imperial phase, but it's not sustainable once you encounter truly advanced species. Imperial thinking becomes a trap that prevents further development." Vandermeer gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, showing the relocated Quithan worlds orbiting their new red dwarf star. "We could have destroyed your empire militarily, but that would have taught you nothing except to fear superior firepower. Instead, we've created a situation where imperial control is impossible, but species survival is guaranteed." "Forced evolution," Zilith breathed, understanding flooding her consciousness. "Guided evolution," Vandermeer corrected. "The choice is always yours. You can spend the next century trying to rebuild your empire and failing repeatedly as we continue to adjust your circumstances. Or you can learn to think beyond imperial paradigms and discover what becomes possible when entire species work together, instead of against each other." Naval Coordinator Wex Plinth leaned back in his chair. "And if we choose cooperation, what then?" "Then you join the consortium. Your species' unique perspectives and capabilities become part of a galactic civilization that spans 47 million star systems and includes 12 billion sentient species. Your archaeological expertise alone, Dr. Craymore, would provide insights that could help us better understand and assist newly contacted civilizations. The scope of it staggered Zeleth's imagination. 12 billion species working together, 47 million star systems in cooperative partnership. How do you coordinate such a vast civilization? She asked. The same way you coordinate the cells in your body, Vandermeer replied. Not through central control, but through distributed intelligence and shared purpose. Each species contributes what it does best. Each world develops according to its natural potential. Conflicts are resolved through understanding rather than force. It sounds like paradise, Elder Prime Nexthyra said slowly. It's work, Vandermeer corrected. Constant, challenging, rewarding work. Building galactic civilization requires every species to grow beyond its initial limitations. The reward is becoming part of something immeasurably larger than what any single world could achieve alone. He stood, and Zeleth noticed the chair faded from existence as he did so. The educational consultation period begins now, Vandermeer announced. You have 1 standard year to demonstrate your species' commitment to cooperative development. At the end of that period, we'll evaluate your progress and determine whether you're ready for partnership or require additional adjustment. Additional adjustment? Wexplinth asked nervously. Vandermeer's smile was gentle but implacable. Dr. Craymore can show you the archaeological records of species that required multiple educational interventions. I believe you'll find them instructive. With that, he was gone, leaving the council to contemplate the most important examination in their species' history. 6 months into their educational consultation, the Quithan civilization had transformed beyond recognition. Dr. Zeleth Craymore stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Interworld Coordination Center, watching cargo shuttles move between the 17 relocated worlds with an efficiency that would have been impossible under their old imperial system. Status report from the Cultural Integration Committee? She asked Brexkoth, who had transitioned from colonial administrator to director of interspecies relations. Remarkable progress, he replied, consulting his datapad. The Helixians have agreed to share their bioengineering technology in exchange for our advanced metallurgy. The Cormanic species has reopened trade negotiations. 3 of our former subject worlds have requested formal partnership agreements. Zeleth nodded approvingly. The shift from imperial dominance to cooperative partnership had been challenging. Their entire governmental structure had required complete reorganization, but the results spoke for themselves. Without the enormous overhead of maintaining military control over unwilling subjects, resources could be redirected toward technological development and cultural advancement. Any word from our deep space exploration teams? Zeleth asked. That's the interesting part, Brexkoth said, his bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement. Our scouts have been making contact with other civilizations in our new galactic region. Many of them are also part of the educational consortium. They've been helpful. The understatement made Zeleth's feeding tentacles curl with amusement. Helpful hardly described the extraordinary generosity they'd encountered from species who had once been strangers. Advanced manufacturing techniques shared freely. Scientific knowledge exchanged without proprietary restrictions. Cultural exchanges that enriched both species involved. Council Leader Nexthyra, incoming transmission from the Terran Educational Corps, announced Scanner Adept Wilneth from the communications array. Display, Nexthyra commanded. Commander Vandermeer appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a being that resembled a crystalline tree, its faceted structure refracting light into complex patterns. On his other side, a spherical entity covered in shifting geometric patterns floated at head height. Council Leader Nexthyra, Dr. Craymore, greetings, Vandermeer said. "I'd like you to meet Educational Coordinator Prexthala of the Symmetric Collective." He gestured to the crystalline being. "And Harmony Singer Velthen of the Resonance Union." The floating sphere pulsed with what Zilith somehow understood was acknowledgement. "We're here to conduct your midterm evaluation," Prexthala said, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that made the chamber's walls vibrate sympathetically. "Your progress has been monitored by the Consortium's Educational Assessment Division." "How are we doing?" Nexthyra asked, trying to mask her anxiety. "Exceptionally well," Velthen replied, its communication taking the form of complex musical tones that their translators converted to meaning. "Your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability. The transition from imperial hierarchy to cooperative federation is progressing ahead of projected timelines." Vandermeer smiled. "Your archaeological expertise has already proven valuable to the Consortium, Dr. Craymore. Your analysis of imperial collapse patterns has helped us refine our educational protocols for 3 recently contacted civilizations." Zilith felt her bioluminescent patches flush with pride. "We're contributing to the curriculum?" "More than contributing," Prexthala replied. "Your species' unique perspective on civilization cycles provides insights that benefit the entire educational program. The Quithin approach to systematic analysis complements human intuitive leaps and symmetric logical frameworks beautifully. Which brings us to your final examination," Vandermeer continued. "The Consortium has identified a species that could benefit from Quithin educational assistance, the Mordak hierarchy, a young imperial civilization that's currently following the same expansion patterns your species once pursued." Zilith exchanged glances with Nexthyra. The implications were staggering. "You want us to help educate another species?" Under Consortium guidance, Velthen clarified. "This would be your practical demonstration of educational principles. Show us that you can help another species learn what you've learned." "The Mordak have recently encountered one of our research vessels," Vandermeer explained. "Their response was predictably imperial. They've assembled a conquest fleet and are currently attempting to track down what they assume is a scouting mission for human invasion forces." Nexthyra's mandibles clicked with rueful recognition. "How large is this conquest fleet?" 437 vessels, Prexthala replied. "They've committed approximately 60% of their total naval resources to capturing human technology." "We know the feeling," Brexkoth muttered. "Your assignment," Vandermeer continued, "is to develop an educational intervention that will demonstrate to the Mordak the futility of imperial expansion while preserving their species for future development. You have full access to Consortium resources and technologies." Zilith felt her research instincts engaging fully. This was archaeology in reverse. Instead of studying how civilizations fell, she would help prevent one from falling. "What parameters govern our intervention?" she asked. "Standard Consortium protocols," Velthen replied. "No permanent harm to the species, no destruction of irreplaceable cultural artifacts, minimum disruption to civilian populations, maximum educational impact." "Essentially," Vandermeer said with a grin, "show them what we showed you, but do it your way. Use your species' unique strengths to help them understand what you've come to understand." Nexthyra stood, her posture straightening with purpose. "When do we begin?" "Your educational team departs in 72 hours, Prexthala replied. "Dr. Craymore will serve as senior cultural analyst. You'll be accompanied by 3 human observers and a symmetric logic coordinator." As the transmission ended, Zilith felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 6 months ago, she had been studying dead civilizations. Now she was being trusted to help prevent one from dying. The examination period was about to become very practical indeed. The Mordak hierarchy's conquest fleet assembled in the Zerion system with all the pomp and ceremony befitting what their War apex Gorthnecks believed would be the greatest military victory in their species' history. 437 vessels of varying sizes and capabilities surrounded the massive command ship Dominion's Wrath, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing in synchronized patterns that spoke of unity, strength, and inevitable triumph. Dr. Zelith Craymore observed the display from the bridge of the consortium vessel Educational Harmony, a ship that existed in a constant state of probability flux, sometimes visible, sometimes not, always exactly where it needed to be for optimal observation and intervention. "Impressive organization," she murmured to her human colleague, Dr. Marcus Voltridge, a specialist in imperial psychology who had volunteered to assist with the Quithen-led educational mission. "Their formation patterns show sophisticated tactical thinking and absolutely no understanding of what they're actually facing," Voltridge replied, adjusting the holographic displays that showed the Mordak fleet's disposition. "Classic imperial overconfidence. They've committed everything to this operation because they can't conceive of failure." Symmetric coordinator Hexathala's crystalline structure chimed with mathematical harmonies. Probability matrices indicate 99.7% likelihood of educational receptivity following standard intervention protocols. The Mordak psychological profile suggests they will respond well to systematic demonstration of technological disparity. "That's where I disagree," Zilith said, her feeding tentacles curling with thoughtful consideration. "My archaeological studies suggest the Mordak won't respond to simple displays of superior firepower. Their cultural matrix is built around honor-based hierarchies. They'll interpret technological superiority as a challenge to be overcome, not a lesson to be learned." She activated her cultural analysis displays, showing centuries of Mordak historical data. "Look at their response patterns to previous defeats. They don't retreat and reconsider. They regroup and attack again with different strategies. Standard consortium protocols won't work here." Voltridge leaned forward with interest. "What do you suggest?" "We need to challenge their fundamental assumptions about power and hierarchy," Zelith explained. "The Mordak respect strength, but they define strength in very specific ways. Military might, territorial control, resource accumulation. We need to show them that true strength lies elsewhere." "Proceed with your analysis," Hexathala chimed approvingly. "The consortium values innovative educational approaches." Zilith activated the ship's communication array, broadcasting on frequencies that would reach every vessel in the Mordak fleet. "War apex Gorthnecks. This is Dr. Zilith Craymore of the Quithen Federation, operating under Consortium Educational Protocols. We wish to discuss your current military operation." The response came immediately, filled with aggressive confidence. "Quithen, I know of your species, former Imperials who surrendered their territories without a fight. Why should the Mordak hierarchy listen to the words of the defeated?" "Because," Zelith replied calmly, "we understand exactly what you're going through. 6 months ago, we assembled a fleet much like yours to capture what we thought was a defenseless human research vessel. The results were educational." She transmitted a compressed data file containing the complete record of the Quithen's encounter with Vandemeer's ship, their subsequent relocation, and their transformation into a cooperative federation. For long moments, silence stretched across the communication channels. Then Gorthnex's voice returned, tinged with disbelief. "You claim the humans moved your entire star system? Preposterous. No species possesses such technology." "That's exactly what we thought," Zelith agreed. "Would you like a demonstration of what became possible once we learned to think differently? About strength and power?" Without waiting for a response, she activated the ship's educational projection systems. Around the Mordak fleet, space itself began to shift and flow like liquid. Stars rearranged themselves into geometric patterns. Planets danced in choreographed orbits. The very fabric of spacetime became a canvas for cosmic artistry. "This isn't conquest," Zelith explained as the display continued. "This isn't dominance. This is what becomes possible when an entire species learns to work together instead of against each other. The humans didn't defeat us. They taught us how to become something greater than we had ever imagined." The cosmic dance intensified, showing real-time feeds from the 17 Quithan worlds, now thriving in ways that would have been impossible under their old imperial system. Scientific advances shared freely between species, cultural exchanges that enriched everyone involved, technological developments that benefited entire star systems. Your fleet represents the most powerful military force your species has ever assembled, Zelith continued. But what if I told you that the combined productive capacity of our 17 worlds now exceeds what our entire empire could achieve when we controlled 43 systems through force? "Impossible," Gorthnex replied, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "War Apex," Zelith said gently. "Your species stands at the same crossroads ours faced. You can continue pursuing imperial expansion, fighting increasingly difficult battles against species that will ultimately prove superior to your technology. Or you can learn what we learned, that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from the cooperative development of entire civilizations." She paused, letting the cosmic display fade back to normal space. "The choice is yours. But before you decide, consider this. The human research vessel you've been hunting, it's operated by a graduate student who's younger than most of your junior officers. And she's not even here. She's back at university, writing her dissertation on how imperial species learn to transition to cooperative ones." The silence that followed was absolute. Zelith could almost hear the psychological gears turning in Gorthnex's mind as he processed the implications. "What are you offering?" he asked finally. "The same thing the humans offered us," Zelith replied. "Education. The opportunity to discover what your species can become when it stops limiting itself to imperial thinking. The chance to be part of something immeasurably larger than any single world could achieve alone." She transmitted another data package, this one showing the current state of Quithan integration with the Galactic Educational Consortium. Trade partnerships spanning thousands of light years, scientific collaborations that had accelerated their technological development by centuries, cultural exchanges that had enriched their civilization beyond anything their imperial phase had achieved. "Your fleet could return home as conquerors who found nothing worth conquering," Zelith continued. "Or it could return as the advance guard of a species ready to join the greatest cooperative venture in galactic history. The choice, War Apex, is entirely yours." The Mordak fleet hung in space, 437 vessels suddenly seeming very small against the backdrop of infinite possibility that Zelith had shown them. And in the depths of space, other ships began to appear, not human vessels, but representatives of the thousands of species that comprised the educational consortium, each one a testament to the power of cooperation over conquest. 3 months later, Dr. Zelith Craymore stood in the Great Assembly of the Galactic Educational Consortium, a structure that existed simultaneously in 47 million star systems while occupying space in none of them. Around her, representatives of 12 billion species gathered in harmonious cacophony, crystalline beings that sang mathematical theorems, energy entities that communicated through controlled stellar flares, and countless others whose forms defied easy categorization. At the center of the vast amphitheater, War Apex Gorthnex, now Educational Coordinator Gorthnex, was delivering his species' formal presentation on cooperative fleet logistics. The same military precision that had once been dedicated to conquest now served to coordinate relief efforts across 17 sectors experiencing resource shortages. "The Mordak transition has exceeded all projections," Commander Vandermeer said, quietly, appearing beside Zelith with his characteristic disregard for conventional space-time limitations. "Your educational approach was masterful. Using cultural respect frameworks instead of technological intimidation, we'll be incorporating your methods into the standard curriculum. Zeleth's bioluminescent patches flickered with satisfaction. They were always capable of greatness. They just needed to understand that greatness didn't require conquest. Much like another species I could mention, Vandermeer replied with a knowing smile. Across the assembly, the presentation shifted to show real-time footage of Mordak engineering teams working alongside Quithan archaeologists and human researchers to restore a damaged star system. Where once there had been competing empires, now there was collaborative science on a scale that transformed entire regions of space. Dr. Cray Mower, came a harmonious voice from behind them. Praxithala approached, her crystalline structure refracting the light of 1,000 stars. The Consortium Council has reached a decision regarding your species' final evaluation. Zeleth felt her feeding tentacles curl with nervous anticipation. This was the moment that would determine whether the Quithan Federation would be granted full partnership status in the consortium or require additional educational development. The evaluation results? She asked. Unprecedented, Praxithala replied, her harmonic overtones carrying notes of genuine admiration. Not only has your species successfully transitioned from imperial hierarchy to cooperative federation, but you've developed innovative educational methodologies that have improved our success rate with newly contacted civilizations by 37%. Vandermeer nodded approvingly. The Mordak transition was the fastest successful imperial to cooperative conversion we've recorded. Your archaeological perspective on civilization cycles provided insights that none of us had considered. Which brings us to your new assignment, Praxithala continued. The Consortium Council has voted unanimously to establish the Quithan Federation as the primary educational coordinators for imperial species in the Andromeda region. 17 civilizations have been identified as candidates for cooperative transition. The scope of the responsibility was staggering. 17 entire civilizations, each with their own unique cultures and challenges, each requiring individually tailored educational approaches. You'll have full consortium support. Of course, Vandermeer added, teams of specialists from 1,200 different species, access to all our technological resources, and complete authority to develop whatever educational protocols you deem appropriate. Zeleth looked out over the great assembly, watching. Beings from across the galaxy work together with a harmony that would have seemed impossible during her species' imperial phase. The Quithan had gone from archaeological observers of dead civilizations to active participants in nurturing living ones. There's something else, Praxithala said, her crystalline structure chiming with what Zeleth had learned to recognize as excitement. The humans have detected signs of intelligent life in the Magellanic Clouds. If confirmed, this would represent the first potential contact with civilizations from outside our galaxy. The scale of such an encounter, Vandermeer said thoughtfully, would require educational approaches we've never attempted. We'd be representing not just human interests or even consortium interests, but the interests of an entire galaxy learning to work together. The implications were breathtaking. First contact with truly alien civilizations, species that had evolved completely independently of any galactic influence. The educational challenges would be enormous. The potential rewards immeasurable. When do we begin? Zeleth asked. Immediately, Praxithala replied. Your first assignment departs tomorrow. The Zenthkari Dominion in the Outer Spiral Arm. They've recently discovered hyperspace travel and are showing classic early imperial expansion patterns. As the Great Assembly continued around them, Zeleth reflected on the journey that had brought her species to this point. 6 months ago, they had been aggressors attempting to capture what they thought was a helpless research vessel. Now they were teachers, helping other species avoid the same mistakes. The black ship they had tried to capture had indeed been operated by a graduate student writing a dissertation, but that dissertation had become the foundation for new educational Protocols that would help thousands of civilizations learn to reach beyond the limitations of imperial thinking. Commander Vandermeer, Zelith said. What happened to Kestrel Nix Hartwell, the student whose ship we tried to capture? Vandermeer's smile carried genuine warmth. She defended her dissertation last month with highest honors. Her work on imperial transition patterns, based partly on her encounter with your fleet, has been selected as the basis for next year's graduate curriculum. She's been invited to join the Advanced Educational Theory Department. And she's how old? 24. Standard years. Zelith's feeding tentacles curled with rueful amusement. Their entire empire had been restructured by the indirect consequence of threatening a graduate student's research project. The scope of human casual capability was still staggering to contemplate. Dr. Kraymore, Prexathala said, there's one final item. The Consortium Council has approved funding for your proposal to establish a galactic archaeological survey. Your species' expertise in studying dead civilizations will help us better understand why some species successfully transition to cooperation while others require more intensive educational intervention. It was perfect. Zelith had spent her career studying the ruins of failed civilizations. Now she would help ensure that fewer civilizations became ruins. As the Great Assembly concluded and representatives began departing for their various assignments across the galaxy, Zelith looked up through the structure's impossible architecture at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Zenth-Kari Dominion was probably assembling a conquest fleet, convinced that their military might could overcome any obstacle. They were about to receive an education, and for the first time in her life, Dr. Zelith Kraymore was looking forward to being the teacher instead of the archaeologist. The black ships continued their patient work among the stars, carrying graduate students and researchers to study the galaxy's endless variety of civilizations. Most species learned to leave them alone after their first educational encounter, but occasionally, some young empire would decide that a lone research vessel represented an opportunity for easy conquest. When that happened, they would learn the same lesson the Quithin had learned, and the Mordak after them, and countless others across the galaxy. The universe was vast enough for cooperation. It was too small for conquest, and somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, other civilizations were about to discover that they had neighbors who preferred teaching to warfare, but were remarkably effective at both. The education of the cosmos continued, one species at a time, carried forward by the patient work of teachers, who had once been students themselves. In the end, the greatest conquest was learning not to conquer at all.